Hi everybody. Today, don't worry. If you can't draw, there's no problem. I've got a workaround for that you're going to love. So I'm working in my Canson Mixed Media 11 by 14 and I'm giving this page a coat of white gesso just to prime it and get ready for all the stuff that I'm going to throw at it. So here's the secret. Tissue paper. I'm going to tape this tissue paper onto a sheet of copy paper. I'm going to make sure that it fits what I'm going to copy onto it, and I don't want any of that tissue paper going over the edges, and I'm taping along the edge. Take the time to fully adhere this. Don't spare the tape. Press out the wrinkles. It'll be well worth your effort. Even when you are extra careful, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it jams, but being able to copy stuff on tissue paper is such a great thing to do and gives you so many options. It's well worth to take the time. So this printable comes from supercoloring.com. It's Cherry Blossoms in Vancouver by Ivitar Bach. And once I print it out, I am going to cut it out while it's still on the copy paper. That gives it some substance and makes it easier to cut out. You can water cut it like you've seen me doing with napkins, but the tissue paper is a little bit waxy on the underside, and so it doesn't work as well as with napkins. So I prefer cutting, and I'm removing as much of it as possible, but it will be going translucent. I'll be doing the rest of the fussy cutting off camera. Take the time to subscribe to my channel if you're not a subscriber, and be sure to check the notification button to be notified of upcoming videos. So the copy paper template, I'm just putting there in place of where the apple or cherry blossom is. And now I'm using this linked tiles stencil and putting thickened gesso through it. This gives subtle texture, not as much as modeling paste, not as precise, but I absolutely love it. And it is one of my favorite things to use. I'm just cleaning off the stencil there because it seeps underneath, and then I'm applying it to another couple areas. And I'm just wiping it off and then going to put it in the third area. This is on copy paper and it's enough texture I can use that as something else. And here's the third area. So that is going to sit and dry. You can use a heat tool. Once everything's completely dry, I'm using unbleached titanium and white gesso and spreading it on with a makeup sponge. And then I've put this hanging vine stencil, and I'm just removing some of the paint through the stencil with a baby wipe. You can use a wet cloth as well. This is just adding some texture and interest to the background, and since I'm going to have that apple blossom and it's like up in the air, I thought putting the leaves would be a good thing to have. It's very subtle, and you don't see a lot of it in the end, but I didn't know that at this time. If you don't have the hanging vine stencil, use any foliage stencil. So again, I'm going to make sure that this is completely dry. And now I am going to do some stamping. And I grab, not my black, but sepia archival, and this stamp from the Faded Type stamp set, Tim Holtz, Stampers Anonymous, and this is another one in that same stamp set. I've been using this a lot. I love this set. So many of them, they are so functional and usable. This is the Onion Blossom stencil, and I've mixed quinacridone magenta with Naples yellow to get a corally cherry blossom color. And I'm just putting that on the page. Introducing the colors that are going to be in the cherry blossom are also going to be in the background. And okay, there's where my cherry blossom's going to go. I'm just kind of eyeballing it so I know where to put things. At this time I thought I was going to avoid going underneath where the cherry blossom will go, but I changed my mind about that, so you're going to see me add. So this is the Tiny Dot stencil, also from the Crafter's Workshop, and I will link and name the stencils that I use, and you can get those at Amazon, at NinnysNapkins, or at the TCW Shopify store. There's affiliate links in the description box and even coupon codes if you're interested. Now I use some green. Again, that is the green that I'm going to use in the cherry blossom. And as you go through a page, you're going to slowly change some of the ideas that you've had. Chose not to use that stencil. Instead, I grabbed the link tile stencil that I put the modeling paste through and the Naples yellow, and I add this yellow to the background, and OMG, I loved that look. It's not something I typically do, but that yellow just really brightened the page and added something wonderful to the page. And there I've put all the markings even underneath where the apple blossom is going to go. And that allows me, it's going to be in between the branches. So I've positioned the cherry blossom, it's actually cherry blossom, and I'm using my fluid matte medium. I lift it up and then little by little glue it down and put the matte medium on top. Tissue paper is a little more forgiving than napkin, a little more sturdy, so you can lift it up and move it if you get it in the wrong place, but it's pretty fragile still. And you can see, because I have a light background here, the tissue paper goes translucent. Now the tissue paper has a shinier side or a waxy side. I printed on the matte side. I put the shiny side down. So there is my workaround because I don't feel comfortable drawing. So once that is completely dry, I am now going to paint my cherry blossoms. I have the coloring page, which I've put on tissue paper, and now I'm going to paint it in. The flowers are a little more intimidating, so I'm going to paint the branches first, start with what's easy. I'm using brown, I'm using a little bit of gesso in there, getting some different tones. I'm going to add some yellow and some green into the branches as well. Now I've sped up this part of this video. It does take a considerable amount of time to do this. Just start with what you know. And that's why we art journal. If I was going to do this on a canvas, I would want to practice and perfect it and figure out some of the bugs. And then I could do it on a canvas or on a wood panel. And I just might, because I love cherry blossoms. And here in Victoria, BC, it is cherry blossom season. And it is beautiful to drive in different parts of the city and see the blossoms. So I'm just adding some color to the buds. And it's just a mixture. I'm mixing gesso with the alizarin crimson, quinacridone magenta, and the Naples yellow. A lot of times I pick up both colors on my brush and paint with it, so it's not all blended together. And I know at this stage I'm coming back and I'm going to add shading and highlighting. This is just the base coat. I'm putting the gesso to block off any of that background. And then I can add the color, and I'll become adding more layers of color over time with either acrylic paint or my Inktense blocks. As I said, this printable came from supercoloring.com. I get lots of printables from them, and then I use those in my artwork. If you don't want to print it on tissue paper, you can print this on copy paper and cut it out and glue it down. It's going to give a slightly different look, but it will work too. Here I'm applying gesso to each of the petals or sections of the petals. I try to leave that black line in to give me some guidance, but I know that I can always look at my printable. I have a copy of it and I can see where the different petals are, and they have this sketch marks on them, hash marks and stuff, that I can follow where the shading might be. You can also bring up pictures of apple blossoms and get the right colors and tones. So I've added a little bit of shading here with the darker quinacridone magenta, and I'm also using some Inktense blocks in Merlot to shade on top of here. And right now it is going through an ugly stage, and that's okay. I know I'm going to add those lines in. That's going to make a difference, and you're going to see that at the end. The less precise I am, the happier I am. Here I just want to bring lots of tones in. I'm looking at the printable right now. You can see, again, I'm putting gesso on each of the sections of petals, trying to keep some of that black line in. Here I'm just adding some white on here, a little bit of shading, highlighting, and then just adding color. I don't wait for the gesso to dry here because I like that blending. And I have a whole section of liner brushes and round brushes and small brushes that allow me to get in there. And I prefer doing this technique with smaller brushes. So one more flower, and you can see each section I've painted in, giving it a little bit of a dry, and then coming in with color. I think I got better as each flower I did. That first one. But it's not done yet because we're going to do more shading and we're going to add some more highlighting and some line work. When you put it on the tissue paper, there's no bulk added. And the excess, any of the excess tissue fades away, so you don't even have to fussy cut in and amongst the leaves and the branches. And that's the advantage with the tissue paper over copy paper. Here I'm using my Inktense blocks. I'm just wetting my brush and getting the ink on the brush and just doing a wash over top of the cherry blossoms. And you can see I'm going very loosely. And now we're going to come in and do some shading. I've got black acrylic paint, my angle brush, and I'm going to shade the leaves, the buds, the flowers, the petals of the flowers. And this is going to define the petals, put back what I lost by painting over it. This is where it starts to come together. And again, look at the printable or look at pictures of apple blossoms or cherry blossoms. So when I start out and it's going through that ugly stage, I tell myself, okay, you know you're going to shade, you know you're going to highlight, you know you're going to add more color, you know you're going to do line work. Those things will set this off. Don't give up, just keep working through it. Adding some yellow on top. I'm tweaking with the colors as I see fit. I'm just following my instincts. Here I'm adding some highlights with white or the white gesso on my brush. And every little addition just adds. And giving it a dry. So between every layer I am drying it completely. So now I'm going to do the centers of the flowers, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to put the black lines in first or the dots. So I grabbed my stylus and I'm putting the dots on this one. Then I decide, oh, maybe I should do this first. I've did it both ways. I'm not sure which way works best. And this is the part of the flower that I think I can work on and improve. In the end, it looks okay. When I put the black paint on the liner brush, it is thinned black paint. And when I use the paint on the stylus, it's right out of the tube. So there I put the dots, and now I'm adding the line work. And since it's dotted paint, it's a little thicker, you want to make sure that dries completely. Now the background seemed a little bit too upfront. So I am giving it a whitewash. I've got white gesso that I've thinned down, and I'm just painting it over the entire background. And you can see on the left-hand side, the side that's done, the difference from one to the other. The end product really looks like a whitewashed wallpaper. I love the end look. Every one of those little bits, the stenciling, the stamping still shows, it's just pushed back. And this allows the focal image to come more to the forefront. And it's not competing with the patterning in the background. In the end, you're going to see a picture of just the background before I did the softening, but this whitewash technique really does a great job. So now I'm taking some brown paint on the pad of my thumb or my finger and rubbing it over that textured area where I put the thick gesso through, and that's just grunging this up. It's bringing out the pattern and the texture from that thickened gesso. Because if I put just a texture on, I want to see it. I'm going to bring it up. This really turns it into a vintage. I found a couple sentiments from my Through the Garden Gate sentiment pack, and there'll be a link to that sentiment pack if you're looking for a great sentiments selection. You can go check that out at NinnysNapkins.com. And I picked two from two different sentiments, Bloom and A Time for New Beginnings. I love spring. Spring on the island here is amazing. The blooms have started. Here I'm using a woodless charcoal pencil and edging the page, and I'm softening it. It goes with that vintage look. And I'm also going to be adding some line work onto the cherry blossom, which is going to kick it up just one more notch. I could have used my General's charcoal as well. So here I'm using the woodless charcoal pencil, which you can sharpen, and I'm adding some lines. You're going to see a close-up of this. I'm just going sketchy lines around this, and this just really made the cherry blossom. It just added. I'm not thinking too hard. I'm adding lines. I'm not even trying to necessarily stay on the edge. And you can see all the yumminess. Now, if this was on a canvas or something outside of my art journal, I would spray this with a fixative because the charcoal will smear if you go and paint it with a varnish. So you just have to be mindful that you've used something that's going to reactivate or smear, and take the proper steps. I wanted to bring out more yellow, so I'm splattering with gold. If you're not a splatterer, omit that step. It's an easy enough one, but this, it covers it all, and it just really adds to it, in my mind. I love how this came together. There are close-ups of the finished page. I hope you give this tissue paper can't draw, no problem hack a try. Until next time, go get creative.